Silly degree. So I quickly returned the sewing machine. I was like, there's no way. Also, people would be looking bananas if I was making their swimsuits. So.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to SoCal SoCial. I am Scarlett, and today I have Katie Loughridge, owner of Swell Swimwear. Katie started this business during the pandemic, and she's a local San Diegan, so let's get into it. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
So what inspired you to start Swell?
Honestly, I don't think I ever would have done this, or at least not within the earlier stages of my 20s if it wasn't for the pandemic, because I'm always so go, and I have so much going on, and I'm a yes man girl. So I just accidentally say yes to so many things that I never really have the time to sit down and do something, like even think about starting a business. So having all of that extra time on my hands, I think it was like 2 weeks into quarantine when we couldn't go anywhere and life was just kind of at a standstill. I am not okay with just like sitting here playing poker, drinking wine with my friends. Like that's only going to get me so far for so long. So I was like sleepless at nights thinking, how can I be super productive with this time? Like, yeah, sure, I could get into the best shape of my life, but what could be kind of like a longer term? Also, at that time, more than ever, everyone was online. So that was pretty much all you could do, was be on Instagram or Facebook or like Google or YouTube. So it was a really good time to build an online presence for something. So that's when I was just like, I got to do this. And that was also right around the time when Instagram shopping became a thing. So I was like, if anyone has anything that they can sell, at least try to, because now more than ever, it's just so easy to click and ship and just have a business. I went through a whole kind of list of things that I could potentially start a business with. And then I realized that there are a lot of things about swimwear that align with my life. So I'm from San Diego. I surf, like I'm always out in the sun and in a bikini. A lot of my friends are like fit and have nice bodies, so they could potentially become models. So there was just a lot of things that kind of seemed like they were aligning with the bikini idea. And it also, in the beginning in my head, I thought that it would be a low cost to get started with something as opposed to starting something that costs a lot of money.
Right. And you have other products as well. So with the Swell Swimwear, there's been other branches. So what other products are you working on right now?
Yeah, so it's expanded like crazy over the past 2 years. So I first started off with bikinis, and then the towel thing happened, which is a funny story, but I sell towels now too. And then at this point, I have hats, candles, baby onesies, t-shirts, hoodies, just a ton of apparel, along with the bikinis and men's swim trunks, I would say, are my like bread and butter.
So getting started, I know you talked about the finances. A lot of people, they do want to start building a brand, but they run into the financial situation. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, so I didn't really spend a crazy ton of money that people probably imagine when they go to start a business. They probably think you need like 5 to 10K to get started, which I'm sure eventually it started to add up to that amount of money. But in the beginning, really all I started off with was a Shopify account, which I think is like $35 a month. And then the LLC, which did rack up to around like $400. So the initial, literally having a website and just a company was under $500. And then the rest, I just really tried to be super creative about using my own resources. So like I said, when I started doing photo shoots at first, I was just using my friends who were willing to be in them. So some other companies would have to hire a modeling agency or, pay people to be in these shoots, but I was getting that for free. And then videography, I have a really good friend that does that. So I had a lot of opportunity to save a ton of money for the startup of this by utilizing my own resources. And then the initial bulk buy for my first batch of suits and towels, yes, was pretty spendy. But after that, I could just be self-sustaining for a very long time.
Right.
And then
I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and a really good takeaway was when you're first starting the business, exhaust all options to keep the cost down in the beginning. Okay, so in the beginning of your business, what were some of the biggest setbacks and how did you overcome those?
Getting the brand name out was hard, especially because I didn't have a ton of money to put towards like paid media and all of that, which obviously spreads to the masses. But I think just getting people to know about the brand and not just my friends knowing about it and more or less the general public. So I think that getting recognizable people with a good following, I know it sounds lame, but influencers will spread the word of your brand out so much faster than if you were to try to just meet a bunch of people off the side of the street. So,
do you have any significant failures that you've had a big learning experience from?
Yeah, definitely. So, one big failure that I had in the first year of starting my business actually did have success points to it, but I had on my to-do list for the first year of starting this business to go and do a few bikini shops or even like summer, boutique shops and try to see if they would be willing to sell my product. One day I was on my way home from LA and had a little bit of time, so I stopped by Black Book Bikini in Encinitas and I was like, this is like my pursuit of happiness moment. I've never gone into a boutique and just asked the owner if I could like become a part of their store. And I was like, whoa, like I can't believe that the first time that I tried this, it worked. And let alone Black Book is pretty well known and very high end swimwear. So I was stoked. I was like handing over all my inventory to her, but I didn't realize how it all worked. And obviously you learn things as you go, but essentially like I gave her a ton of my inventory to be sold in that store, but I only made wholesale, return on it. So she's going to make all of the MSRP markup money, and then I'm just making basically what I bought it for. So it's good for brand recognition, but as far as revenue, especially in your first few years of owning the business, doesn't really help. And then at the same time, my high standards kind of bit me in the buns too, because my Swell Swimwear with a tiny bit of recognition was next to like, Gone Bananas or Frankie's Bikinis. So obviously the girls going in there know what they're looking for and they recognize that those brands and not Swell's. So it ended up kind of getting swallowed by the other people's competition. And then around like 6 months later, she wanted to kind of refresh her product line and was just going to go with those higher end brands. And it makes sense because she probably didn't sell that much of Swell's. Right. Not to say that it's not a good product, but there just wasn't recognition behind it. So I think that moving forward, I'm only going to approach stores until I have a really good brand awareness built up. But then that turned into a success for me because, not to say that this is going to happen every single time, but me having the courage to walk in and say, hey, I have a swimwear line. Would you be interested in potentially selling some of it? And then meeting with her and learning all of what I did and it working out gave me the courage to just keep doing that moving forward. So It was definitely a learning experience.
So moving forward, how are you going to get the recognition out there? Are you doing it mostly through e-com? Are you doing a lot of pop-ups? What's your goal with that?
Yeah, so I'm doing both with paid media, which is one of the only ways that you can really just like through Instagram and all of that, just choose your demographic and really target the right people, which is important because like I said, not a lot of people in OB or like in certain cities are really going to be even interested in my product. Whereas if I target, say, people who stayed at the Surfrider Hotel in Malibu, that's exactly my demographic. But I already have a residency at the local and then a residency now every last Thursday of the month at Palmies and PB. And then I just had a bar studio ask if I could do a pop-up. So I'm seriously just going to continuously do pop-ups and then hope to kind of go up the coast with that.
So with all this, you're so busy, but you also have a full-time job.
Yes.
So how are you managing both?
Yeah, so that's the funny side note to all of this is that I do have a full-time job in sports marketing. And luckily, due to quarantine happening, we were forced to work from home and then we've never gone back to the office. So yes, I'm dedicated to my full-time job and I check all of those to-do lists off, but at the same time, not having to drive to the office, get ready for the office, pack a lunch, all of that saves me so much more time now than it did in the past, which can be used towards productivity. Also, if I want to get shiz done, then I'm waking up way earlier, and then I forget what it's called, but there's some term for like right when your full-time job ends, you go into, they call it something like a graveyard shift or something like that, but it's like your side hustle after your normal job. So you have to forego fun plans or, you know, certain things that you used to do to kill time to get it done, or it's never gonna get done. And I run it completely by myself.
Like, what is your morning routine like? What's your nighttime routine like?
I start off usually by going through a ton of my emails, because if something pops up that's super important that may need to be taken care of that I didn't see earlier, I'll just knock that out. And then I always make a to-do list for things that have to be done for my full-time job that day. And then I'll make a to-do list for what needs to be done for Swell. I always mix in a workout somewhere just because that brings me back to life and gives me extra energy. But I'm a huge like planner, OCD list type person. But
to-do lists are crucial.
Yes.
If you are listening to this and you don't have a to-do list, make a to-do list. So do you have employees at Swell, or how are you managing all of the tasks?
That's a really good question. At first, I was completely by myself, and I, at this point, still am. I did last summer try to bring on 3 SDSU interns. I was excited to bring them on just for even word of mouth purposes, because they go to state and they could share it with all of their sorority girls, which my brand is definitely kind of your like 16 to 30 years old type of a look. So they would have been perfect. And don't get me wrong, they're great, but they were coming in as freshmen from the East Coast. So they ended up just, you know, being too excited and getting started with college that, again, not to their fault, but they just kind of didn't really like do many of the things. So pretty much this whole time it's just been me.
So this is proof that you can have a full-time job and be building your dream brand all at the same time. So speaking of your pop-up shops, how did that get started?
Yeah, so obviously when I first started the brand, I planned on doing some sort of pop-up shops to get my product in front of an actual audience, but I didn't actually end up pulling that off until a year into the business, which again, quarantine didn't help that. But this one day I was walking around at this OB farmers market, and they just had a lot of different vendors and things like that. Not to say that any of them were like 100% like my brand, but I figured even if it's just for awareness, it'd be cool to get a booth here. Yeah. So I went the next week at the same time and asked kind of who runs the show. Ironically enough, he literally walked by like right as I was about to walk by, and they were like, oh, actually, there he is right there. So I introduced myself completely. I wouldn't say faked it until I made it, but I way over kind of sold the brand. Well, because he was like, are you ready to do a pop-up? Do you have this? Do you have that? And I was like, uh-huh. And he's like, okay, great. Come next week. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't have a tent. I barely have a table. Like, I didn't even have a clothes rack at that point because I had never done a pop-up.
The answer is always yes.
Yeah, I'm like,
yes.
Oh, for sure, next week, no problem. So anyways, to say that was a scramble to pull that off would be saying the least, but I did. I pulled it off, and now I have just a very easy process of, I have a car that can fit everything. I have a clothes rack that disassembles, a really light table that I can carry with just one arm. So
I love that. And I think like a huge takeaway is, just always say yes. And even if you don't know how you're going to pull it off, figure it out and make it happen, and set large goals and just go after them. So what is your best advice on someone that is ready to take that leap of faith?
I know there's so many cliche things that I could say about advice that you've already all heard, but like you heard, I'm doing this all by myself. So don't be afraid to do it by yourself, and maintain, whatever the responsibilities are for yourself, and just be proud of yourself for doing that. But don't bring on people that are actually going to make your job for that business harder or kind of set you back. And then my second piece of advice that kind of adds on to that is try as hard as you can in the beginning of starting a business to maintain whatever you were doing for work before that. Because I'm sure if you're even in a position to be thinking about starting a business, you have a really cool vision for it and you're excited about it, and you don't want all of that momentum and excitement to get killed by quitting your full-time job that is paying your rent or your grocery bills to put it all towards something that you're super excited about, and then it doesn't necessarily bring in the income that you need at that time, and then you're gonna almost resent the business and all of that because it didn't work out right away. So I'm 2 years into owning this business and I've maintained my full-time job the whole time.
So it's actually so funny that you give this advice, because a previous guest that I had, they said, quit your job, go all in, because that's how, investors knew that they were serious about it. And so that was their main focus. So I think it really does vary person to person. If you are starting something, do what's best for you in that moment and what makes the most sense for you financially, and then run with that. I think is networking is everything. Meet every person that you can, everyone that crosses your path. You never know when the right person is going to fall into your life.
100%. That's something that I was going to mention is meet someone new every single day. And then also do something. As a business owner, you're already kind of taking a leap of faith. So try to do something out of your comfort zone every single day.
Yes. Katie and I have actually been going to a lot of networking events lately.
Yeah, even if you're an introverted person,
get out there, do something that scares you, bet on yourself.
Even if it's just one person that you meet and it's not 20, just also, even if you're introverted, just practice almost fake being outgoing when you go somewhere. And someone's not going to know that you're introverted. So, yeah.
And it gets easier as you do it more, and you just put yourself in those situations. Every time is a little bit easier. Right. And then you look back and you're like, wow, I was scared to do that. And now it's just second nature.
Your level of scared just grows to the point where like your next thing is going to be like climbing Mount Everest or going on Ellen. So.
Give it your all.
I agree.
For now, stay tuned, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram. It is everywhere.